Welcome back. Week 13 waiver wire pickup shows. Luke Reimer here with Flurry Sports. I am here to give you week 13 waiver wire pickups. I'm also here answering questions, answering trade questions if you still have a trade deadline. If you're still within the trade deadline, start sit, anything that you need, I'm here to help you out this week as we get, inch a little bit closer to these fantasy playoffs. We're coming off of a week where there was a lot of close games, but nothing really consequential happened in the NFL. I guess kind of Carolina losing last week helped Tampa Bay out. But really, what are we looking at here? We're separating. Kind of feels like the Rams are the juggernaut in the NFL right now. We saw that Philadelphia just completely collapse at Dallas, which I mean probably a pretty good win for Dallas. My guy Chip Kelly is out at Vegas as an offensive coordinator. But hey, let's get right into it. As always, I am using Henry John, who is a writer here at Flurry. Go to flurrysports.org to see the full article, the full breakdown of all these players. But I'm using this as a skeleton to kind of give you an idea of what are the players that should be picked up this week. So let's start right off the bat at the quarterback position. Now we don't have any buys this week, so we might be in a position where, the waiver wire is maybe not as important. But I think right now is probably the time to really jump on guys, right? Because if there are no buys, people probably aren't, going to say, aren't going to be as active. So before we start off with quarterbacks, I just want to say Joe Burrow is supposed to play this week. If Joe Burrow's somehow available on your waiver wires, he's a number one priority pickup, as the Bengals aren't totally out of contention yet. And it kind of feels like Joe Burrow gives him a little shot of adrenaline in that offense, get Jamar Chase going. So let's get right into it. Jacoby Brissett is our first quarterback we're going to talk about. It's no secret that the Arizona Cardinals are not a very good football team, right? But the one thing that kind of has been working has been Jacoby Brissett, which is kind of different because, right, we've always said that this Arizona line is kind of built for running. We thought coming into the year Kyler Murray would be running more, James Conner, Trey Benson. Those three guys aren't there, so that leaves them to passing. And Jacoby Brissett is a guy who has gone out and produced, right? I mean, he put together an NFL record 47 completion game. Um, Over 6 starts, he's averaged just shy of 21 fantasy points, which again, that's better than some guys that are getting week to week starts. Um, Owning 23% of the league. He's doing it all with a wide receiver 1, 2 in Marvin Harrison, which has been a big boost for right the Michael Wilson owners out there. I think Michael Wilson has 25 catches in the last 2 games. Um, I mean, Arizona's defense is nothing special. So I imagine this high volume passing attack continues to move forward. Going up against the Buccaneers is a very tasty matchup this week, as Matthew Stafford and the Rams just shredded them for 34 points. So if you're in desperate need of a quarterback, like Jacoby Brissett is probably a top 10 guy the rest of the way, at least in my mind. And he's a guy, right? He's averaging 21 fantasy points over 6 starts. It's hard to really argue with those numbers. So Jacoby Brissett is if you're a quarterback needy team, he is a guy that I think you can spend some fab on. You can be confident in him moving forward. The other quarterback we have to mention is C.J. Stroud. He hasn't played since week 9. We see Davis Mills come in and not be that fantasy superstar, but be the guy who can kind of continue to play winning football, I guess, for the Texans and not really play horrible for fantasy. I see some people coming into the chat here or into the stream. If please drop some questions in the chat. I'm here to help you answer it. Doesn't have to be a waiver wire pickup. I would love to talk waiver wire pickup. If it starts it, if it's trade, let me know. Um, Texans won 3 straight, and the offenses look much better than it has earlier in the year, right? I mean, Stroud gets a favorable matchup against the Colts this week. I imagine the Colts probably get up in that game, and Houston's playing from behind. But with the Nico Collins, with the Dalton Schultz, with the a Jaden Higgins, with these guys who are playing good football right now on top of that defense, I think Stroud is definitely worth an option. I don't think you're picking him up and starting him over guys you've been riding all year long. But again, if you're quarterback needy, I think you can do much worse than C.J. Stroud this week against Indianapolis. And then just talking about, Stroud, looking forward, if you're someone who wants to get ahead of the game and pick, someone up looking forward. I mean, Stroud's coming up with the Arizona Cardinals and Las Vegas Raiders, two of the worst passing defenses of the NFL. So it's definitely a situation to kind of take and look at and monitor, and see if if you pick him up, put him on your bench, see how he performs this week, and if he does well, I think you have a starter come end of the year fantasy playoffs when we're trying to make the trying to make a push. Warrior Loft, what's up, bro? Got any questions? Please drop them. I'm here to answer everything you've got. Running backs are in a weird spot right now. Um, there's not really right anything to like you're going out and chasing something off the waiver wire right now. Again, another player who I don't think is probably out there a lot, but if he is, Bucky Irving, also Trey Benson. There are guys on injury, designated for injury, Amari and Hampton that are to return. Again, they're probably not out there, but it doesn't hurt to check and put a bid in for them. I like those guys over these two guys. I'm going to talk about three guys. I'm going to talk about. Our number one waiver wire pickup this week for the Jacksonville Jaguars by Shell Tootin. Um, 2 weeks ago, he played, 32% of snaps, which has been his most, and totaled 15 yards on the ground. He did pick up an injury, and it kind of felt like coming back this week. It felt like just get your feet back wet and get going. Trevor Lawrence hasn't been the greatest thrower of the football lately. So they're gonna have to run the ball. I do like Travis Etienne. But how much can this Jaguars offense really support one running back? And Tutin's obviously RB2 in this offense. Um, Jags have shown that they'll run the ball. We know that they'll run the ball. And, like look what Liam Cohen did with Bucky Irving last year. I think there's room for both Tootin and Travis Etienne produce. I don't think Tootin you're ever coming into a week and starting Tootin as an RB1 or as an RB2. But if you need, a flex play with a low floor, like I think 10 carries is within the cards for Bashel Tootin here. And Warrior Loft, what's up? He's got a question for us here. Jacoby Brissett versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers or Joe Burrow versus the Ravens. Burrow's rusty plus no Higgins. I agree with you. I'm in on Brissett. Warrior, I don't know if you caught the start of this, but talking about Brissett as being my number one pickup this week. If you need a quarterback, he's averaging 21 points in 6 starts this year. Arizona's pass defense is not great. Like I think, right? I think this is kind of a bounce back game for Tampa. We'll see what happens with Baker, but even with Teddy Bridgewater, I think the Buccaneers should be able to run the ball and should be able to control this game a little bit, which makes me think that Arizona is going to work that pass like they have been these last 6 games with Jacoby Brissett. Um, Marvin Harrison's status is up in the air, but really does that matter? Like I said off the top, Michael Wilson has 25 receptions over the last 2 games. I'm in on Jacoby Brissett. Warrior, definitely check out our the fantasy football rankings for Week 13. I'll actually tell you right now. Zach Bruner, who was the top 5 in fantasy rankings last year, is our go-to guy with this. He's got Joe Burrow at 7, Jacoby Brissett at 9. So he's thinking somewhere in the same path here. Again, I don't think there's probably much difference between them. But if rust and injuries is a factor, I like Brissett more than Burrow this week. Neil Day, I'm happy that you dropped Devin Neal because he was the next running back I was going to talk about. Alvin Kamara goes down with an MCL sprain in week 12, and Devin Neal kind of has shown that he's the next man up. Snap count jumped to 59 on Sunday due to injury. I didn't know that. That's kind of crazy. It doesn't seem like Kamara is going to be like a long-term injury. I think if Kamara is healthy, they're playing him. But this could be a week where the Saints don't really have anything to play for. There's no really reason to run Alvin Kamara too much. So I think Neal definitely steps into an RB1 situation. Now, for the Saints, how much does that really mean? But again, how many waiver wire running backs are you going to pick up that step into that running back one situation? So yeah, Neal, I do like Devin Neal. I kind of just put together that your name and his name are the same. But yeah, Devin Neal's a flex play for me. I think anytime you can get that RB1 production off the waiver wire, like again, Devin Neal's only owned in 1.8% of ESPN leagues. So if you're looking on your waiver wire, I'm sure he's available. Go and pick him up. And I with the Saints having a matchup against let me pull it up here against the Dolphins. I mean, Dolphins' run defense has been better than it was to start the year, but again, there's not great by any means. I actually think the Saints could win this game, though. I'm talking myself into it. I think Devin Neal. This could be a Devin Neal. Here I'm in the league. This is what I can do. So yeah, Neal, I agree with you. I'm in on Devin Neal. Any more questions? Please continue to drop them. I'm not going to be here very long. I started kind of late. I apologize for that. Usually we're here, about 8:15. I started about 9 or 8:45. Hoping to be out of here by 9:15 ish. So again, I'll stay as long as there are questions. But talking about wide receivers, we talked about CJ Stroud off the top with quarterbacks. So let's talk about Jaden Higgins. Jaden Higgins has been working as that wide receiver too to Nico Collins's offense. Last week we saw him, get his career high with 9 targets, and 7 targets and 4 receptions in 4 of the last 5 games. Um, it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out with Stroud coming in the offense compared to Davis Mills. But I think I don't think it's crazy to say that CJ Stroud's a better quarterback than Davis Mills, right? So maybe those targets get spread out, but maybe they're more efficient routes. But again, just like CJ Stroud, looking forward, Jaden Higgins has he has the Raiders, he has the Cardinals, he does have matchups that are really exploitable, especially with 4 teams on bye next week. He's definitely a guy that if you want to get ahead of the game to pick him up and kind of stash him for a week. Owning 23.3% of ESPN leagues, I think he's a guy that is probably out there in your league. If you had to guess, I think he's out there in one of my leagues. I put a bid in for him. I'm not spending crazy amounts of fab on it because I don't necessarily know that he's your starter, unless Nico Collins goes down. But are you relying on him in the fantasy playoffs? I don't know. It kind of feels like more like a pickup. I'd rather have him than someone else have him. But again, it's hard to argue with the schedule coming up. The other guy, another receiver we can talk about, Chimere Dike for the Tennessee Titans. DK has been one of the few bright spots with this Titans offense that only has one win. Titans team in general that only has one win, and that one win kind of came on a fluke situation against the Cardinals. Um, I mean, I think he's leading or he's top 5 in total yards. He's getting punt returns. He's getting long receptions. He's been getting a couple rushes. I mean, just given the nature of this Tennessee offense, right? It feels like they need spark plugs, and it feels like Chimere Dike is kind of fit into that role where he can be a guy where they can just hand the ball off to, or they can run some kind of weird trick play that works, or they just hit him on a deep crosser and just let him run with the ball. Um, he's between 3 and 5 targets a game, but he saw 7 with Isaac Iamana's sideline last week. So watch his status. If Iamana's not healthy or not completely healthy, DK is the number one target in this offense, in my mind. Like I said, punt returner and has a high floor. If you are in those situations where you get that return yardage points. Again, this is not one that I'm ever going to be really confident about starting, but if I need a spot start, right, the floor is there with 7 targets plus punt return yardage. Feels like he's a guy who can take a touchdown at any play of the game. So yeah, I I think DK is worth a pickup. I think he's worth a flex look if IMINR is out. So follow that. Warrior. It's hard to start Justin Jefferson at the moment. I totally agree. I drafted Justin Jefferson in a couple leagues. I've been trying to have to get creative. He's thinking of starting Michael Wilson and George Pickens this week. I love them both. I honestly I love them both. Um, my whole issue with this, and this is kind of sounds like a dumb issue, but we know how good of a player Justin Jefferson is. If they ever figure it out, right, he has to be the guy. Now JJ McCarthy's got a concussion. Does Max Brosmer coming in help that offense at all? I would argue yes, it would. Is this a game where if McCarthy misses, Brosmer comes in and find some easy check down, easy tunnel screens, easy slants to Justin Jefferson just to get him going. I'm pulling up Zach's rankings here to see where he has Justin Jefferson. I can't imagine it's very high. So just for sake of argument here, he has George Pickens at 8. He has Justin Jefferson at 18 and Michael Wilson at 19. So Zach's kind of in the same mindset as you. Warrior, I'm curious on your flex. My pushback on this is if you sit Justin Jefferson and he goes, 10 for 115, 2 touchdowns like we've seen in the past, you're going to feel like such an idiot. But I agree. He's almost like not startable at this point. Like it hurts your team to kind of rely on him. You're going to have to look another route. So Warrior, let me know what your flex is, but I totally agree with going Michael Wilson and George Pickens over him this week. Spartacus the Marine, welcome, brother. Good to have you. He has Herbert, Joe Burrow, and Jacoby Brissett. I'd like to keep them for my matchups and play keep away. I like to keep Jane Reed, but to do so, I'd have to drop Troy Franklin and Monty for 3 running backs and Reed. I Spartacus, I assume I'm just going to continue to work through this here. Herbert, Burrow, Brissett, Christian McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor, Quentin Johnson, Woody Marks, Monty, Travion Henderson, Brian Robinson, Puka, Tet, Higgins, Franklin, Tyler Warren, Brock Bowers, 2-2-2 flex. Okay. Or do I just let Reed and one of the quarterbacks go? I think at this point, And I assume your trade deadline's over because I tried to like if your trade deadline's not over, like I think trying to move trying to move Montgomery and if you can partner that with a Joe Burrow maybe to a quarterback needy team, I think you could get something good in return. But I'm looking at this and I don't love Troy Franklin moving forward. That Denver's offense is so volatile, and I think when Jaden Reed comes back, I don't know how much It's always the case. Talked about it on the show many times with these Packers pass catchers. You're never going to predict who's the guy who's going to go, you know, 7 for 100 and a touchdown. Feels like it's someone new every week. Like Christian Watson has been playing really good football lately. He's a deep threat in that offense. But I guess when you bring Jaden Reed back in the mix, he probably plays that kind of that Tucker Craft role, or just get the ball into space, short yardage, and let him run with it. I'm curious to see how much they bring Jaden Reed in. Of course, Spartacus, if Jaden Reed can fit into an IR spot, I mean you'll have to watch that. I know they're coming up on Thursday, so it's probably not a good idea. But if I don't I'm not confident. Are you ever confident that you're going to start Troy Franklin? Um, or Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a tough situation. I don't hate letting Jaden Reed go, to be honest. Or again, if your trade deadline's there, I don't hate packaging a Jaden Reed and Joe Burrow to try to get an upgrade. Maybe at this maybe at your wide receiver too. I like Ted McMillan. Um, yeah, I mean, you have a good team either way. Um, I think so. If you put a gun to my head, I think I'm dropping Franklin if I want to keep Jaden Reed. If you're not strong on that, I'm fine dropping Jaden Reed. He's going to get picked up, and he's probably someone's probably going to get some production out of him. But again, looking at your team, pick whoever you're starting at quarterback, but you're starting McCaffrey, you're starting Jonathan Taylor. And your receiver, you're starting Puka, you're probably starting Tet, and then your two flexes. Um, yeah, I'm probably starting. I'm going to continue to ride the Travion Henderson wave, I think, until it blows up. And I guess that's, and then T Higgins, if he's healthy, I know he's out this week. Um, but I think you can get away, especially with those two tight ends. Yeah, I'm fine dropping Jaden Reed if you have to. But I think I'd rather drop Troy Franklin over him. Again, whoever you drop, they're going to be picked up immediately, so you're going to have to deal with it. So if you want to let Jacoby Brissett go and hopefully he makes it through this week and pick him back up, I'm fine with that too. I know I'm not giving you a real answer, but if I had to rank him, I think dropping Jacoby Brissett's fine, and I think dropping Troy Franklin's fine, then I think dropping Jaden Reed is fine. Let's continue on. Appreciate the question, Spartacus. If you have any more, please drop them. If anyone else has any more questions, please drop them in the chat. Let's go back to our waiver wire pickups. Mentioned Chimere DK. John Mechie is kind of an interesting one. Donnie Mitchell. I like John Mechie more than I like Donnie Mitchell, just to get that off the cuff. We saw John Mechie score last week. So bringing Tyrod Taylor to play quarterback instead of Justin Fields gives the Jets a little bit more of a passing attack, right? And with Garrett Wilson, it's kind of like a Tennessee Titan situation where they're just looking for anyone to kind of give them a spark. I think John Mechie is that guy. I think he has been that guy in the NFL. He's not really been in a situation where he could be put into kind of a featured receiver role. I think that this is definitely an opportunity with the Jets. Um, you know, 9 of 10 targets over the last 2 games, and 2 straight weeks with a touchdown. Like I think if you're chasing points, I think you might chase this points because I mean he is he feels like the number one pass catcher in this offense right now. Worry loft. I'm in a 10-man league. I have Josh Jacobs, Kyron Williams, and Christian McCaffrey. I can't afford Josh Jacobs to have a single digit point for the third week. Yeah, I do think that I think that there's a reason that I think Josh Jacobs could have played last week, but they're coming in onto a short week. You can run against this Lions defense. I think Josh Jacobs should be a go this week. Again, I think he could have played last week. But just given that it's a 4-day turnaround, I think Green Bay needed to be as healthy as possible against Detroit in a major NFC North matchup here. So I think Josh Jacobs gets work this week. And if, as always, if I'm predicting anyone on this Packers team to score a touchdown, it's Josh Jacobs. That's coming from a Packer fan. So yeah, I don't have much confidence in this passing attack. I think Jordan Love's a fine player, but at this point, right, we kind of saw it against Minnesota that if that run game is working, Matt LaFleur is more than fine running the ball as much as possible, which is why we kind of saw that huge game out of Emmanuel Wilson. So if the Packers do get down in the red zone, it's going to be Josh Jacobs that get those first targets. So Warrior, check the injury status again. I think Josh Jacobs should be fine. I know that's kind of a quick turnaround being the first game of the week on Thanksgiving. But if Josh Jacobs is a full go, you're playing him. He's going to be used. Oh, I'm sorry. You're talking about Justin Jefferson. Um, yeah, yeah, I agree. So just going back to your team, Warrior. So you're doing okay. Who's ever quarterback set Burrow? I think I like Brissett, but Burrow. Then you're doing Um, Karen Williams, Josh Jacobs, Christian McCaffrey's two running backs flex, Michael Wilson, George Pickens as your yeah, that's fine. I think that's fine to start him over Justin Jefferson. I think those running backs can make up for any you know side steps or anything that you're not getting in that flex spot. So yeah, I'm fine if you want to take a shot here to sit Justin Jefferson. And then I'm gonna close it out here. I know this has been a quick show. Again, please answer if you're here, or please ask if you're here. I'm trying to help everyone out as I can. I For tight end pickups, Harold Fannin again is continues to top this list. 48.2% owned in ESPN leagues. We have Shadur Sanders starting for the Browns now, and I don't think that Shadur Sanders is going to take any huge chances at this point in the season. Um, Harold Fannin has at least 4 receptions in the team's last 7 games, line up all over the field. It feels like this offense is just kind of get him the ball how we can, get him the ball creatively. That significant yardage hasn't been there, but I think that'll come. Quinshon Judkins is going to continue to run the ball well. So having that solid run game will help open that intermediate part of the field. Fannin plays enough snaps and sees enough targets to remain a desired fantasy football waiver wire pickup option. 6 targets with Shadur Sanders is nothing to scoff at. Like I know a lot of people don't like Shadur Sanders. I've always been a Shadur Sanders guy. I think he's very accurate with the football. He's going to take what the defense gives him. And having a big body target like Harold Fannin is going to be that something that the defense is going to give him. So yeah, like if you were in a situation where maybe you were streaming tight ends or you were looking for a pickup any week and it hasn't come yet, I think Harold Fannin is a guy to look at. The other tight end we had is Brenton Strange. Um, he hasn't played 6 full games this season, so in less than 6 full games, 25 receptions on 29 targets. Caught all 5 of his targets and finished with 93 yards last week. Again, that's nothing to really scoff at. And we continued to, Brian Thomas and Travis Hunter are, injured or up and down and all this. Feels like Brenton Strange is kind of becoming this guy with the Jags offense, who has been playing better than predicted, but Trevor Lawrence hasn't been playing good. It's been a weird kind of mix here. He stepped back. He stepped right in and played 44% of the snaps. I don't think injury is a concern. Um, I think that he's a guy, again, much like Fannin, that if you have to start a tight end, you're not mad about picking up Brenton Strange and starting him. That's what I got, guys. I apologize for the show. We will be back tomorrow with Lombardi Sweep. If you want any insight into the Packers before Thursday night, tune into that. And then we'll be, answering all those last minute questions before. I guess we usually do it Thursday, but given the holiday, um, Wednesday's the time to do it. We're going to be doing all fantasy football stuff. So I know I'm giving you kind of a short and dumbed down version here. Please come tomorrow night. We'll have the full crew on. We'll be talking ball. Actually, I don't think we'll have the full crew on, but Zach and I will be on for sure. We'll be talking ball. We can let that show go a little bit longer to make up for tonight. So as always, I appreciate everyone being in the chat. If you have any questions after the fact, please drop them. Wherever you're watching this, we will get to answering all of the questions. I hope everyone, has a great holiday weekend. I hope to see everyone back tomorrow. But if you don't enjoy the holiday season, enjoy some family, enjoy some football. And as we, inch closer to the fantasy playoffs, good luck to everybody. Spartacus Warrior, appreciate you guys being in the chat. Hope to see you guys tomorrow. Peace.